Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks Health. Today, we're going to talk about cancer, a little different recording format. I'm going to have my glasses on today because we're going to have to talk through some things that I'm going to show you basically on the screen. For those guys who are listening out there on audio only, I'll do my best to describe what we're looking at. But today, we need to go through some things to get a better understanding of cancer. And if you have cancer, you have a loved one who has cancer, if you know somebody who has cancer, the purpose of this video is to kind of demystify cancer a little bit and to help us understand it better, help us, understand where it comes from, and then how to address it and how to attack it, maybe in a little bit different version or way than we've been taught previously. So right now our answers for cancer are chemotherapy, right? So chemotherapy and surgeries and things like that. So let's start off with kind of an explanation of what cancer is, okay? And cancer really can be formed it's been a mystery, let's say, for a while, but it's really not that much of a mystery now. I don't know how much money we spend on cancer research, but to me, it's pretty well characterized. I mean, if you look at the scientific data that's available for cancer and kind of its causes and genesis and all that, it's pretty well known. And as you'll see, I'm going to use a tool called Chat GPT to be able to deconstruct it a little deeper here, which will be fun. We'll do that here in a second. But let's lay the groundwork a little bit first. So cancer has to be caused by something. It's a dysfunction in cells. It's cells that decide, hey, I kind of forgot who I am, and I'm going to go back to my most ancient and basic way of functioning, which is proliferate, and be like a cancer cell. So a cancer cell is kind of an old, ancient way that a cell will function, will metabolize, will kind of create energy and, stay alive. So a cancer cell does that in almost the most basic way possible. And it's almost like what happens is a cell, has a purpose. That purpose is really donated by the DNA inside that cell. So a cell knows kind of what he's supposed to do or she's supposed to do by the DNA inside of that cell. And the DNA kind of will respond, let's say, to stimulus and then give commands to the cell to do certain things. Well, in cancer, it's an extreme loss, let's say, all the way back to, I just bumped my microphone. I'm sure that'll be fun audio wise, but cancer just represents an extreme loss of cellular function. Okay. And so it takes cells just all the way back to their most basic level. And then they just try to proliferate and expand and grow as much as they can. So what causes cancer? That's really the interesting, $100,000 question, but it's pretty obvious. I don't know why we, think it's not anymore. And again, we'll walk through this in chat in just a second. But God just doesn't decide one day, hey, Chip, I'm going to give you cancer, right? So here, have some cancer of the pancreas, blah, cancer of the colon, blah, some, whatever type of cancer. It doesn't really work that way. And it feels like it does. And we're almost, kind of led to believe that that's the way it works. It just, well, sorry, Chip, you got cancer. No, doesn't work that way. Okay. So cancer really can have different genesis, let's say. So there is a pathogenic genesis to cancer, meaning there are bacteria and viruses, things that get inside of you that will cause cancer. Okay. That was proven in the 1920s. If you really want to get mad about something, and if you've lost somebody you love to cancer, we had that part figured out in the 1920s. The environmental part, I mean, we should have had figured out before then, because we knew if we, subjected ourselves to certain things like lead or, plutonium, that those things would cause cancer, right? So it's looking like there's two different ways that cancer can be caused, either environmental or pathogenic. Okay. But at its core, it's always, always, always the same thing. And that's something called DNA adducts. Okay. So it turns out that DNA is not as, we think of DNA as that nice, pretty helix, that goes together. And then if you've sort of studied how DNA works, you'll know that that helix kind of comes apart in certain areas, like in a gene expression. So let's say you're trying to fight cancer, you're trying to express P53, which is a protein. So the DNA is going to come apart right at that P53 sequence. You're going to have a little reader come along called RNA polymerase that's going to basically read that sequence. And as he's reading it, he's reading the proteins, and then he's spitting out a string of proteins associated with that sequence. And now you built P53, a protein that will help you fight cancer. Okay, well, what happens under cancer? Well, again, the helix is all, begins to come apart. And then what happens in cancer is that DNA gets adducted, meaning that things will stick to it. And things will stick to the nucleotides that are on that DNA sequence. So it kind of becomes a big, goofy, and arguably DNA is a fractal antenna. So it's, that's a little woohoo, let's say, for most people. But arguably DNA is a big fractal antenna. Okay. And what is it receiving? Mitochondrial output, mitochondrial vibration, mitochondrial frequency. Okay, but back to cancer. So cancer will kind of glue things onto DNA and cause it to kind of get wonky, right? And this isn't proven, but it just makes logical sense. That's likely why the cell forgets who he is. Oh, I forgot who I am now because my DNA got adducted. I'll just turn back into the most basic thing I know how to do. That's be a cancer cell. And that's exactly what it looks like happens in cancerous things, which is pretty cool, right? Okay, well, well, let's unlock that. Boom. All righty. Hopefully, let's make sure you guys can see that. We just had a little screen technicality. I'm switching between screens here. Okay, so it looks like you can. Good. All right. So the first thing that we're going to look at, and I apologize, this table is a little messed up, but we'll mess with it. So you have cancer type here, and basically these are all the types of cancer. So lung cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, brain cancer, leukemia, liver cancer, ovarian cancer, and melanoma, all listed. And then we've got the next column is mitochondrial metabolism. So I wanted to really look at kind of what the mitochondria were doing in these guys, and if they'd flip back to Warburg. So Warburg is the most basic thing. And then I wanted to look at environmental factors that would cause this to happen, and then pathogenic factors. So we won't go through all of these. And if you want this table, I will make this table available in the comments or something in the basically podcast. But basically, you'll be able to download this table if you need to. But what it does, and let's just look at breast cancer here. So again, breast cancer doesn't always go back to this very basic kind of state, metabolic state, called Warburg. So sometimes it maintains some normal, let's say, mitochondrial respiration, which is a little unusual. The environmental factors that can cause breast cancer, so hormone disruptors. If you have those, smell good things that plug into the wall in your house, things like that, right? So BPA, you got to, look at plastics and make sure that the plastic that you're using for drinking water or storing things in your house doesn't have BPA in it. Obesity is always a cofactor, and radiation is a cofactor. So again, if you're working a plutonium mine, then you're going to be at greater risk of breast cancer. But then you have pathogenic factors. So can viruses cause breast cancer? Yeah, Epstein-Barr virus can, cytomegalovirus can. Gut dysbiosis can cause breast cancer. Okay. So you can have certain instances where certain types of bacteria overgrow in your gut biome. and this will make you way more likely for breast cancer. And this is this firmicutes is also really associated with obesity. Okay, so again, if you have cytomegalovirus and you have a firmicutes overgrowth, and you also are working around, let's say, hormone disrupting chemicals, you're going to be at a much, much, much greater risk of breast cancer than someone who isn't. Let's look at pancreatic cancer, because pancreatic cancer is a bad one, right? So he's getting a lot of people right now. And why? Because of H. pylori, really. And so we'll see that in a second. But look at what happens to the mitochondria. So you have strong Warburg effect, and you have suppressed mitochondrial function. And that's what happens in most cancers. Again, what environmental factors could cause this? Chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation can be caused by any infection inside of you. So you could have a staph infection and or MRSA infection. Processed food consumption, chemical toxins. So isn't that interesting? Can cause pancreatic cancer. But look over here. You've got Helicobacter pylori. Now, H. pylori is something that we see in a lot of people. If you have burning or upset or GERD or ulcer-like symptoms, then you most likely have H. pylori. And he is very comorbid with many cancers, okay? But if you look at some of these cancers that oh, well, you have brain cancer. Oh, that's horrible. You know, how could that be associated with any pathogen? Look at this. You know, cytomegalovirus is a very common virus. Epstein-Barr virus is a very common virus. A lot of people have Lyme. So again, that's going to put you at greater risk for brain cancer. And melanoma is kind of interesting. So it's and there's more to this UV radiation. Like you're built as a human, you are built to interface with the sun. You're built to be in the sun. You should, be fine in the sun. Like the sun shouldn't really hurt us, let's say, in the way that it does right now. And this is more related to diet and omega-3, omega-6 consumption than anything else. People getting melanoma and people getting, let's say, skin things from the sun. All right. So then I just went in and I said, okay, well, let's look at environmental factors that cause DNA. And so again, I'm not going to read through all of these for you guys, but we will post this in the blog, associated with this podcast. So smoking, right? So benzoprene, and again, what does that do? It affects the lung, the bladder, your oral cavity, and esophageal type cancers. If you look at processed foods, why are processed foods bad? They have nitrosamines and acrylamide, and these guys form alkali DNA adducts. So these guys adduct DNA, and that leads to methylation damage in oncogenes. This can cause cancer in the colon, the pancreas, and gastric. Alcohol forms acetaldehyde, which forms DNA adducts. So alcohol is a big comorbid thing with a lot of cancers, and it definitely forms DNA adducts. So it's not something that we want. Pesticides form DNA adducts, X-rays, endocrine disruptors. So if you have, again, those, things that smell, that cause a strong smell-like reaction, are endocrine disruptors, all right? And those are comorbid with breast, prostate, and ovarian cancers. Chronic inflammation, and this happens in high omega-6 diets. So you guys hear me preach all the time about omega-3 and omega-6 balance. I mean, here's just another reason why, because in high omega-6, you're going to have more reactive oxygen species, ROS, and you're going to have more NF-κB activation, and that's going to lead to continuous DNA oxidation and adductation. So not good. Okay, so that's environmental stuff, right? Which is kind of interesting. Let's look at the pathogens, okay? So HPV, anybody out there have HPV? Again, that's going to be comorbid with cervical, anal, head, and neck cancers. And it's interesting, head and neck, isn't it, with HPV, because that's more of a, let's say, a genital thing, or you would think of more of as a genital thing, but it can affect the neck and head. Epstein-Barr virus, we see Epstein-Barr virus indicated in a lot of people that we test, and we also see mononucleosis-like signs. So again, lymphoma, gastric, and nasopharyngeal cancers. H. pylori, we probably see in about 60% of the people that we analyze. And again, what we do is not a diagnostic. We couldn't say for sure if you had H. pylori, but we could say, oh, it looks like you might have it. And so 60% of the people that we test, it looks like they might have it. And it's responsible for stomach, esophageal cancer. It's comorbid, even though it's not saying it on this little, exercise I went through. It's comorbid with breast cancer. It is, the pancreatic cancer causer, colon cancer. So H. pylori causes a bunch of stuff. He also does a little trick with red blood cells, where he will mess with red blood cells. Okay. Hep B and C, again, liver cancer, Lyme disease is comorbid with brain cancer and lymphoma. Cytomegalovirus, we also see in a lot of people. He's a easy virus to kill, right? He's pretty easy to get rid of, but if you don't know you have him and aren't working to get rid of him, then he can rock and roll. But he's responsible for glioblastoma and colorectal cancer. Okay, and so, I'll just read you this. So the key takeaways from my little chat here that we'll post again in the blog is DNA adduction is a common pathway in nearly all cancers, occurring when toxic molecules, ROS, or metabolic byproducts attached to DNA, disrupting normal function. So it's not God that gave you the cancer. It's an environmental thing, or it's a pathogen that's adducting your DNA and causing basically dysfunction in those cells. Environmental carcinogens, smoking, alcohol, processed foods, radiation, endocrine disruptors introduce mutagens that form direct DNA adducts, okay? So if you want to get cancer, do more of that. Smoke a lot, drink a lot of alcohol, eat a lot of processed food, be around radiation, and get some of those little plug-in, smell things for your house, right? If you don't want to get cancer, then eliminate those things from your behavior, because those things form DNA adducts, okay? And then pathogens. So HPV, Epstein-Barr virus, H. pylori, hepatitis, candida, cytomegalovirus, all hijack host DNA. They alter methylation patterns or induce chronic inflammation, leading to direct DNA adductation. Okay. So why am I telling you this? Why are we going through this exercise? Oh, well, Chip, that's great. Now I know where my cancer came from. That doesn't help me with my cancer. Well, it kind of does, right? Because again, if we understand where and how the cancers are formed and we remove those insults, then you're not going to have that pressure on your system anymore. Your body has two ways to fight cancer, provided you're in a fasted state. Why do we talk about intermittent fasting and fasting and fed so much? Because of this, right? So you got two ways to kill cancer when you're in a fasted state, okay? So your body will try to help you fight the cancer and kill the cancer, but we got to remove the cause first, right? So if you have an H. pylori infection, again, you can do a whole bunch of stuff to try to help you with your pancreatic cancer. But if that bug is still active and still eating you and has gotten to the cancerous stage, you're not going to beat that bug. That bug's already beat you to get to that stage. So you have to deal with the insult. You have to deal with the insult, all right, in any of these cancers. So, if you have cancer and you're going to an oncologist and they're not asking you about your environment and what's in your environment, and do you have endocrine disruptors in your environment? Do you have plastics in your environment? Do you work in a lead mine? Do you work in a plutonium factory? We need to stop that, right? If we want to kind of help you with your cancer. But then the other thing is we need to test for all of these pathogens in any kind of cancer. This is on Chat GPT. It's that well known. So in any kind of cancer, we have to test for these pathogens, because if you don't kill the bug, then you're just going to continue to have the cancer. Now, chemotherapy and things like that are going to kind of wipe out anything that's in that tissue. So that is a very severe, let's say, cut some butter with this chainsaw, a pretty severe way to deal with cancer, but it works. We see that work all the time. But there's better ways. And again, if you can remove the insult, if we can kill the bug, then again, you're going to get some help. And so this is something that we've seen. And again, we can't make claims about what our products do, so I have to kind of carefully word what I'm going to say next. But our Gut Restore product, so we built Gut Restore to directly attack H. pylori, because we know that H. pylori is a really bad bug. And honestly, the pharma protocols for H. pylori, it's 2 antibiotics and Pepto-Bismol. And it doesn't really kill pylori. I mean, it sometimes does, it sometimes doesn't. And then the testing that's in the pharmaceutical system right now for H. pylori is not good. It for whatever reason, even these Genova and tests like that don't appear to pick up pylori, at least kind of when we see it indicated. And again, we don't have a diagnostic, so it's can't really be sure about that. But that happens all the time, enough to know that, the sensitivity, let's say, on the pharma, pylori tests are probably not what they need to be. Okay. So it would behoove everyone, even if you're in New York City, come on down to Edmond, Oklahoma, and let's get you tested at Neighborly Wellness for what's going on, for what we might see inside of you as far as pathogens, right? Because if you have these pathogens, you're going to want to know it, and they're easy to get rid of is the other thing, but you're going to have to work to get rid of. So cytomegalovirus, doesn't that sound bad and horrible? Here's some turmeric and black pepper. Bam, that guy's gone. So these guys are not hard to get rid of, but you've got to know if you have them or not. And then, you've got to know kind of the severity and where to go, let's say in nature, as to how to pick them off. So that's what we help with. And we have built a product at Pylori that, again, we can't make claims about it, but I'll tell you that everybody who is taking that product comes back, and when we retest them on our non-diagnostic testing system, they don't indicate for pylori anymore, which is a pretty cool and good thing. And it took about 2 years to get that product properly built, but it is properly built now and works very well. And it also, if you just look at that product, so it's called Gut Restore. You can go to truemedics.com and look at it. But again, if you're concerned, if you have gastric upset, burping, ulcer-like symptoms, you likely have pylori. Again, I can't diagnose you, but I can just tell you likely do. And our product will likely help you. So go to TrueMedics, find some Gut Restore, get it, take it. The other thing that we have up on TrueMedics is a deworm product. So, a lot of us are all wrapped around the axle right now about ivermectin and fenbendazole and their ability to deworm. We have a natural product up. So it's called our deworm product. And it's a really good 14-day, 15-day product built to scrub you clean. So get rid of the, let's say, higher functioning thing called parasites. So when we say, real quick, your body has to figure out how to recognize things that aren't you and things that are you. And it does so in a variety of ways, but it's really important to your immune system so that you don't attack your own self, and so that you do attack things that you should, right? And so anything that's not you, that your immune system doesn't like, is called a pathogen, all right? And pathogens can be bacterias, funguses, viruses, or parasites. And so the worms are kind of, let's say, the highest form of pathogens. So they're the, smartest guys, if you will, although they're not that smart. And H. pylori as a bacterium is pretty darn sophisticated and smart. So, intelligence really doesn't factor into this. It's more do they have the ability to hook you and beat your immune system? And if they do, they're super dangerous because they're going to cause chronic inflammation and cause you all kinds of problems like cancer. All right. So if you have cancer, here's the good news. It's caused by something. And literally that something kind of falls into two categories: environmental or pathogenic. In order to, let's say, stop the insult, we need to figure out kind of which one of those it is and get you out of, let's say, the mold environment that you're in, or get the pylori that you have killed. And, we have ways to do that, right? So we have, and it turns out that God has built us great ways to do that in nature. So almost any bug that we see, let's say, that might be causing cancer, there's going to be an app for that out in nature. So there's going to be a solution to that bug out in nature, and we can find that and basically introduce that. And we've already done that in a lot of the things that we do in True Medics. So hopefully that's good news. Again, cancer is caused by something, one of two things, either a pathogen or something in your environment. If we remove those things, then we will remove, let's say, the pressure on your system to continue to make cancer cells. And then it's just a question of cleaning up what you've got. Now, there is I will say, there is kind of a too far gone with cancer, but it's that line is, moving, let's say, all the time. And there's a lot of things now that we can throw at cancer. All right. So hopefully that's helped. Hopefully that's a good explanation for you guys of the genesis of cancer. And then hopefully you get a good understanding that we can get in the middle of all of this stuff with God's beautiful natural products. And we certainly can. All right. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you guys. And we'll be back for another exciting version of Chip Talks podcast next week. See you then. Bye.